Have you ever wondered what secrets lie hidden in the darkest, most unforgiving corners of the earth? What drives people to dive into the unknown, where one wrong move could mean no way out? In this video, we're taking you deep into Jacob's Well, one of the most dangerous underwater caves in the world. In 1983, two brave divers ventured into its depths, eager to explore beyond its infamous restrictions. But what started out as a thrilling adventure turned into a nightmare when only one diver made it out alive, while the other one found himself trapped, lost in a maze of darkness. What happened next will leave you breathless. Stay tuned to uncover this chilling tale. Jacob's Well is a mesmerizing natural spring and one of the most significant geological sites in the Texas Hill Country. Located near Wimberley, Texas, this artesian spring is not only a popular destination for adventure seekers, but is also a vital natural resource. As the headwaters of Cypress Creek, it flows through Wimberley into Blue Hole and eventually joins the Blanco River, shaping the local ecosystem and history. Discovered by settlers at around 1850, Jacob's Well originally presented itself as a magical fountain. This perennial karstic spring, with a 12-foot wide circular opening, had spouted clear, cool water up to 5 feet high. Settlers, struck by its biblical magnificence, named it Jacob's Well. Over time, it became a source of drinking water, powered sawmills, and eventually evolved into a beloved swimming hole. Today, while its gushing fountain has slowed to a faint ripple due to aquifer depletion, Jacob's Well remains a breathtaking sight and a natural treasure. The spring descends vertically for about 30 feet before angling into a network of underwater passages, making it the second largest fully submerged cave system in Texas. With over 4,500 feet of explored tunnels, the cave system has an average depth of 120 feet. The water originates from the Trinity Aquifer, which supplies much of central Texas. However, over-extraction and development have significantly reduced its flow, leading to conservation efforts to protect this fragile natural resource. The Jacob's Well Natural Area, spanning 80 acres, preserves the spring and its surroundings. Visitors are drawn to the refreshing waters, where daredevils leap from rocky outcroppings into the well's cool depths. The water remains a chilly 68 degrees year-round, offering a welcome escape from the Texas heat. Now, while swimming near the surface is popular, the true allure of Jacob's Well lies in its mysterious underwater caves, a challenge that has captivated divers for decades. For cave divers, Jacob's Well offers a thrilling yet dangerous experience. The descent starts with 23 feet of illuminated water, before plunging into increasing darkness. The cave features two main conduits, nicknamed Tunnels A and B. Tunnel A stretches approximately 4,300 feet, while Tunnel B extends 1,300 feet. Divers encounter narrow passageways, steep slopes, and restrictions as tight as 15 inches. One of the most notorious spots is the Birth Canal, a 2-foot square opening that leads to a steep gravel-filled slope. Navigating these areas requires careful planning, as even the smallest mistake can stir up silt, making navigation nearly impossible. Despite its allure, Jacob's Well is a hazardous environment. Over the years, at least a dozen divers have lost their lives exploring its depths, earning it a reputation as one of the most dangerous diving spots in the world. The risks include running out of air, losing light in the pitch-black chambers, or becoming disoriented in narrow spaces. Skilled divers emphasize the importance of preparation, carrying backup lights, tanks, and tools to navigate this unforgiving underwater labyrinth. The Jacob's Well Exploration Project has been instrumental in mapping the cave system and studying its unique geology. Divers face strong currents, unstable gravel slopes, and tight passageways, all of which require expertise and caution. While efforts to seal off the cave to prevent accidents were once made, determined divers removed barriers, even leaving a note that read, You can't keep us out. Today, Jacob's Well is a blend of beauty, mystery, and adventure. While it offers a serene escape for swimmers and sunbathers on the surface, the world beneath its waters holds an entirely different allure, one of vibrance, danger, and discovery. Whether you're exploring its depths or simply marveling at its history and natural beauty, Jacob's Well stands as a testament to the wonders hidden within the earth. On a crisp November evening in 1983, two young adventurers, Richard Patton and his companion, stood at the edge of Jacob's Well, a mysterious and alluring underwater cave in Hays County, Texas. At just 22 years old, Patton was an experienced diver, passionate about exploring the unseen, the unreachable. His companion, equally excited, shared his thirst for adventure. The duo had heard the many tales of Jacob's Well, its challenging underwater labyrinths, and the fatal allure that had claimed the lives of 8 divers before them. Despite these warnings, they felt prepared to conquer the well's depths and uncover its secrets. In the days leading up to the dive, Richard and his friend meticulously prepared their gear. They checked their tanks, regulators, and lights multiple times, ensuring that everything was in perfect working order. Patton, who had done many dives, knew the importance of preparation. He shared his knowledge with his companion, emphasizing safety and caution. Both of them studied maps of the cave system, particularly the known pathways and danger zones. They discussed their strategy, how far they would go, how much air they would use, and the signals they would use to communicate underwater. While they acknowledged the risks, they couldn't contain their excitement. For Patton, Jacob's Well represented the ultimate challenge, a place where only the boldest divers dared to tread. On the night of November 23rd, they felt very excited and a little nervous. The moonlight reflected on the still water of the well, creating a magical glow. As they put on their wetsuits and checked their equipment, they felt a mix of excitement and fear. Their goal wasn't just to dive, but to go beyond what others had done and explore parts of the cave that few had ever seen. At around 8:30 p.m., the two friends slipped beneath the surface of Jacob's Well. The water, cool and crystal clear, welcomed them into its embrace. With each foot that they descended, the light from above faded, replaced by the beams of their dive lights piercing through the darkness. They moved cautiously, their breathing steady and controlled as they navigated the narrow passages of the cave. By the time they reached a depth of 90 feet, they came across a small passageway. This spot was infamous among divers. In 1979, a metal grate had been installed here following a tragic accident that claimed a diver's life during a failed recovery attempt. However, to their surprise, the grate was now gone. The open passage beckoned them, an invitation to explore unknown territory. Determined to continue, the two decided to take off their tanks. They started pushing the tanks in front of them, using their breathing tubes to breathe as they squeezed through the narrow opening. The passage was tight, and the rough walls scratched their gear. It was a scary and uncomfortable experience, but the excitement of discovery kept them going. Halfway through the passage, something bad happened. Richard's tank got stuck between the rocky walls. No matter how hard he tried to free it, he failed to move it. They started to panic as time was running out. They were deep in the cave, far from the surface, and now they only had one tank of air left. Understanding the seriousness of the situation, the two decided to go back. They started sharing the remaining tank of air as they tried to go back to the entrance. It was very slow and difficult as they had to move carefully and trust each other. The narrow passage was tough, and the rough rocks seemed to squeeze them as they tried to get out. In the confusion, the two went up a wrong chimney, which is a dead end that led nowhere. The walls of the passage were very tight, making them feel trapped. It was a scary situation, and every turn seemed to lead them nowhere. As their air was running out, Patton's friend realized that they had to escape. Gathering his last bit of strength and courage, he swam back down, following the way they came. Gasping for air, he reached the surface, safe but scared. However, Richard was not with him. Trapped in the blind chimney, Richard faced a terrifying situation. The narrow walls were trapping him and making him feel lost. It was completely dark, and he felt like he was being swallowed by the darkness. He started to breathe heavily as his air supply ran out. The weight of the water, the silence, and the understanding of his hopeless situation weighed heavily on him. The blind chimney became his prison, a narrow vertical shaft with no way out. As the last of his air dwindled, Richard's thoughts may have turned to his family, his companion, and the life he had lived. It was a claustrophobic and agonizing end, one that underscored the unforgiving nature of cave diving. When Patton's companions surfaced and alerted authorities, a rescue and recovery operation was immediately launched. Experienced cave divers, familiar with the dangers of Jacob's Well, were called in to locate Richard. The operation was both urgent and delicate, as the cave's narrow passages made navigation difficult. By Thursday morning, the divers located Richard's body in the blind chimney. The recovery was challenging, requiring careful maneuvering to avoid disturbing the fragile silt and gravel. After hours of painstaking effort, they brought him to the surface. His death was a tragic reminder of the risks inherent in cave diving, even for the most experienced divers. Richard Patton's death sent shockwaves through the diving community and the local area. Friends and family gathered to remember the adventurous, spirited young man who had been drawn to the mysteries of the underwater world. His funeral was held at Comal Cemetery in New Braunfels, Texas, where he was laid to rest. The service was attended by loved ones and fellow divers who paid tribute to his passion for exploration and his fearless pursuit of the unknown. Richard Patton's final resting place was marked with love and respect, as those who knew him sought comfort in the knowledge that he had died doing something that he was passionate about. His tragic story became a cautionary tale for divers, emphasizing the importance of preparation, respect for nature's power, and the unforgiving nature of underwater caves. Richard Patton's tragic death highlights the unforgiving nature of cave diving and the fine line between thrill and danger, even for experienced divers like him and his companion. As advanced diving students from Southwest Texas State University, their skills and intelligence were respected. Yet the lack of a simple precaution, a guideline to mark their route, proved fatal. Such safety measures are critical in navigating the maze-like passages of underwater caves, where even minor oversights can lead to tragedy. The Alcove House is a massive cavity carved into the side of a canyon in New Mexico. The site was originally built by ancestral Pueblo people, and it sits at a panoramic height of 140 feet above the floor of the canyon. Visitors interested in the history of this visually stunning place come every year to make the climb up to the Alcove House. However, due to its remote location, its impressive height, and a variety of other natural factors, doing this is actually pretty dangerous. The National Park Service is very forthcoming about warning visitors of the dangers, but sadly, these warnings are not always heeded. Finally, in 2022, things went so catastrophically wrong at the Alcove House that it made national news. One of the things that makes the Alcove House so interesting is that it used to be an actual house where people lived. More accurately, it seemed to have really been something akin to an apartment building. Historians estimate that roughly 25 people lived inside the Alcove House. As the name implies, the Alcove House used to have numerous alcoves, or niches, carved into the walls inside it, each of which served as a separate home for a family to live in. These individual homes curved along the inside of the main chamber, surrounding what served as a large communal area in the center for everyone to share. Located in this communal area is a large brick structure called a kiva. Puebloans use the kiva for religious and ceremonial purposes. The kiva in the Alcove House has a fire pit built inside of it, and when it was excavated around the turn of the 20th century, archaeologists found red corn and matting materials that were still extremely well preserved. Despite arguably having the coolest location, this is far from the only kiva which still stands today. In fact, it isn't even the only kiva in the surrounding area. Alcove House is located inside Bandelier National Monument, a roughly 34,000-acre area about a 50-minute drive west of Santa Fe. Bandelier encompasses an area larger than the city of San Francisco and includes the territories, homes, and other structures that belonged to Puebloans from 1150 to 1600 AD. Today, the Alcove House is accessed by following a 1-mile trail inside Bandelier National Monument called the Main Loop. The trail starts out paved, and it makes for a very easy hike. Or so it would seem in the beginning. The journey gets progressively more and more strenuous as it goes on. Stairs are introduced, and then along with the stairs, ladders start being introduced as well. The stairways also seem to start getting narrower and windier, while the ladders start to get steeper and longer. Some of these ladders lead to other carved-out areas you can explore and peer out from at the canyon below. Many spots on the canyon wall, both inside and outside the alcoves, have paintings on them. Eventually, you cross over a small bridge and arrive at the base of where the Alcove House is located. As you approach, you'll encounter two things: a conspicuous warning sign, and by far the biggest and steepest ladder on the trail so far. The sign is a notice warning visitors that if they proceed any further, they'll be embarking on a 140-foot ascent. Visitors with a fear of heights or health problems are advised not to attempt scaling the ladder. It also requires that children be closely supervised and insists that if you do decide to brave the climb up the ladder, to make sure the ladder is the only thing you climb on. One can only imagine what transpired to make it necessary for the sign to say this. The ladder itself isn't 140 feet, but at the top it immediately leads to more steep, narrow stairs. Visitors have to amble up these single file. At some points, the walkway becomes so narrow there aren't even stairs. It's just a smooth stone ramp where you have to put one foot in front of the other like you're walking a tightrope. It's amazing, particularly at this point, to remember that what you're climbing up to see is something that was home to numerous people, young and old, many years ago. Soon after this, it's time for a second ladder. This one just as tall and intimidating as the first, but now starting many stories off the ground. This, without a doubt, is the stretch of the journey that poses the biggest threat to those fearful of heights. The whole canyon can be seen below you, and if you make the mistake of turning around to look, it doesn't take much imagination to see how one slip could mean bouncing and crashing all the way back down to the canyon floor. Your reward for braving the second ladder is that once you reach the top, the Alcove House finally comes into full, magnificent view. Aside from being carved out of red rock and being 140 feet above the ground, it looks almost like the Hollywood Bowl. You still have to contend with a couple more, much easier ladders and a few more flights of steep, narrow stairs, but you're on the home stretch at this point. Within a few dozen feet, you enter the massive alcove. There is a good amount to see and explore inside, from the kiva to the various restored alcove homes to the incredible view out of the main entrance, which looks much the way it would have to the original inhabitants of this extraordinary dwelling place. Then, sooner or later, you have no choice but to brave the whole journey again in reverse. Down the stairs, down the ladders, down the single-file walkways, back to the ground where the warning sign first greeted you. As should be obvious by now, this site is distinct from others, and that the most challenging and the most dangerous part of exploring it is getting to it in the first place. You have to be in pretty good shape and be pretty comfortable with heights just to see the Alcove House up close. And I promise you, however scary these ladders look on video, they are easily twice as scary when you're standing at the bottom yourself. The ladders seem to be well built and sturdy, but there are still several hazards associated with them that keep park employees in New Mexico awake at night. One is ice. No matter how good the condition of the ladders themselves, and no matter how capable the climber, if you come to Bandelier National Monument in the middle of the winter, there will be snow everywhere, and the rungs of the ladders will be slippery. I'm sure you don't need me to explain why that's a problem. The park doesn't seem to feel the need to explain it either. Every year, they simply close the site, sometimes for weeks at a time, until the weather conditions improve. Another potential danger is that of falling rocks. Unfortunately, ice and falling rocks tend to go together. Particularly as the winter season begins transitioning into spring, snow that's sitting in the cracks begins melting and expanding. This pressure inside the walls of the canyon's various rock formations can sometimes knock things loose and send rocks tumbling down to the canyon floor. These might be pebbles, or they might be lethal boulders. It all just depends on your luck, or lack thereof. Let us now turn to a woman from Illinois who, in the early spring of 2022, had the worst luck of all when she visited the Alcove House in New Mexico. Brenda Holzer was a 54-year-old paraprofessional from Yorkville, Illinois. She was said to have a natural ability to care for others, and she loved traveling and nature. In March of 2022, Brenda took a trip to Bandelier National Monument. The week before she had arrived, there had been a snowstorm. It's possible Brenda was aware of the risks associated with this, but the park was open. So, in any case, she decided to try and explore the legendary Alcove House. It's safe to say, however, that neither she nor anyone else expected what was to come. On Wednesday, March 23rd, Brenda Holzer made the journey out to Bandelier National Monument. As many visitors have before and after her, she walked along the paved trail called the Main Loop, and eventually past the infamous sign warning of the 140-foot ascent up ahead. Now, you'll remember from the earlier description that there are 4 ladders in total on the journey up to the Alcove House. The last 2 are fairly close together and fairly painless. The first immediately follows the warning sign at the canyon floor. It is the second ladder that is probably the scariest, combining length, steepness, and height above the canyon floor for a palm sweat-inducing experience. Brenda made it up the first ladder. She made it up the narrow, single-file stairs. She made it through the smooth ramp where you have to put one foot literally in front of the other. But when she arrived at the second ladder, disaster was only moments away. Surely unaware of what was about to happen, Brenda began climbing this, the most treacherous stretch of the entire journey. It was while she was actively climbing the ladder that, in a stroke of extraordinarily bad luck, a rock decided it was time to become dislodged from the wall of the canyon. Most likely due to melting snow from last week's storm, the rock which came loose during Brenda's harrowing climb was not a pebble. There's no way to know exactly how big the rock was. Even if it had been recovered, it probably would have shattered into many unidentifiable pieces. But we know it must have been fairly big, because it struck Brenda with such force that she was knocked off the ladder. Brenda fell 25 feet, with only jagged rock formations below to land on. Witnesses on the scene who scrambled to her aid reported that they found her, quote, pulseless. Rescue crews were immediately called, but there was nothing they could do to revive Brenda. She'd been killed swiftly. If not by the initial impact of the rock, then surely by the impact of the fall. Authorities immediately closed the whole Alcove House area until further notice, and an investigation was opened. The first thing they seemed keen on finding out was whether or not the falling rock had been caused by another person. This would dramatically change the nature of the case. If someone was responsible for the rock falling, they could be legally responsible for Brenda's death, even if it was a complete accident. Another aspect of the investigation that was important was determining whether or not there was any negligence on behalf of park management. Was the path to the Alcove House and the surrounding area being properly maintained? Was the falling rock something that could have been prevented with better care? Following this tragic accident, many were quick to point out that in most rock climbing areas around the country, those who work to develop the routes usually maintain them. And a large part of that job is finding and removing loose or dangerous rocks on the route. One person who spoke out about this was a man named Peter Olson. Olson is a longtime climber and resident of nearby Santa Fe. According to Olson, it's true that removing dangerous rocks from rock climbing routes is an important routine task, but it isn't true that the Alcove House is a rock climbing route. He told the Santa Fe New Mexican, a local newspaper, that, quote, Places like Bandelier are not really a rock climbing area. It's a historic area with ladders, and who knows what type of mitigation they did above it. Olson also pointed out that falling rocks causing accidents like this are exceedingly rare events. A former employee at Bandelier National Monument named Craig Allen seemed to agree with this, but also described seeing rock falls regularly during his tenure at the park. He said, quote, "Every year you see rock falls like this somewhere in the canyon, just driving around or hiking. They are common at the level of multiple canyon systems, but the probability of them happening in any one place is pretty low." This all makes it sound as though falling rocks are a well-known and regular phenomena in the park, but the risks associated with them are considered negligibly low, even after this horrific incident. A spokeswoman for the park named Joni Budzaleni seemed to corroborate this when she reported that the park hadn't experienced a similar incident in, quote, recent history. She also reported that the investigation concluded no other person was involved in the incident. The rock had simply fallen naturally. Brenda Holzer had been married for nearly 31 years, and she was the mother of 3 children. Her death was the epitome of a freak accident, and it shocked and devastated the Illinois community of which she was an upstanding and beloved member. All the available evidence seems to suggest that Brenda was the victim of an extremely unlikely event. However, it isn't necessarily true to say that nothing could have been done to prevent it from happening. One issue worth pointing out is the fact that the park was open just a week after a snowstorm. Park officials are clearly willing to close the park for weeks at a time when conditions are icy, slippery, and dangerous. Brenda didn't slip, but her death was caused by something related to the snowy conditions, namely the melting snow that expands in the cracks of the rock formations. Should the park have been closed? Another thing which all of us can take away as a sad but important lesson in Brenda's story is the easy to underestimate power of the unexpected. In a way, the Alcove House is a deceptive place. It's deceptive because it seems so obvious what you need to watch out for. Brenda, like anyone else on the ladder, was probably so busy thinking about keeping her balance and not looking down that she probably never saw the rock coming. In the end, it's a sad reminder to all of us that when we're out exploring the new and unknown, there are some dangers for which almost no preparation can save us. Thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to like the video and subscribe for more cave-related stories in the near future. That's all for now. I'll see you next time.